Darlings, welcome to the February episode of Coming to Hamilton. I am so excited for this episode because February marks the 1-year anniversary since the very first show episode a year ago. I can't believe that Cable 14 have allowed me to speak with you for a year. It's unbelievable. I'm sure you will find it quite unbelievable as well. In fact, actually, I was so excited about this show, I decided that I had to wear a suit with Gucci shoes. I've gone the full hog today. I either look like an Armani model or Dr. Crippen. But this has been a wonderful experience for me, and in reflections of our last episode, I was thinking about what one of the guests, Kasim, said, and he was talking about his challenges to finding regular employment in Hamilton since he moved here a couple of years ago. And there was a few things that he said that really stuck with me, and not only did I empathise, I really thought that this is a topic that needs further discussion. So I've decided that for today, we're going to focus this entire show on employability for newcomers and also those that consider themselves or are considered marginalised persons. So before I introduce my guests, I want to just backtrack a little bit and say that the concept of this show and the proposal that I put to Cable 14 over a year ago was actually related to my own lived experiences of looking for employment and the barriers to employment. And I actually wrote a couple of articles for The Spectator, some op-eds that they published word for word. I couldn't believe it. And what was really wonderful about that was that I finally had the opportunity to raise some issues that I was having, but also it enabled people to come forward to me and say, you're not the only one, you've spoken my story. The first one that I wrote, actually, look at the state of me in this picture. This is a cry for help, people, but I look like Dr. Crippen in that, definitely. But the first, actually, this was the second one, opening doors for newcomers. And really what I was saying was, and I thought twice about saying this, I kid you not, but what I was thinking about was moving away from employment based on local familiarity and really starting to think about looking at the resumes and the applications for those whose names that we don't recognise. And if there's something about that person's resume that interests you, pick up the phone, find out more about them. The other article that I wrote, I look a lot better in this picture, I must say, it's the cheekbones. Was overqualified. I couldn't believe that I was called overqualified. Yes, I have a PhD. Yes, I have 12 years working experience in the British government, but being called overqualified, this word, I don't understand this word, and to be honest with you, I've been called worse and I've been called better, but overqualified I don't accept. So doing those articles did introduce me to some interesting people in the community who did come forward, and it was really the catalyst for getting this show. So I can't thank Cable 14 enough for giving me this opportunity. My wonderful producer Harmony, my darling producer Harmony, I should say, Gal, and everybody here. And also, what's never really discussed is that Cable 14 is mostly run on the goodwill of volunteers. We have some volunteers that are helping out on this show today. So I thank you all for contributing your time for this. Now let's get to the guests. The term community leader, it's a term that's applied to many people, but I don't think that term is... This term is deserving of my first guest, the CEO of the YWCA, a community champion for many issues. I can't believe you're sitting in front of me, Denise Christopherson.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's my pleasure.
My absolute honour. You do incredible advocacy for so many important issues, women issues, gender equality. I'd love to know a little bit about your experience of working with people, newcomers and marginalised persons that are looking for employment.
So, Daniel, this is work that goes way beyond my work at the YWCA, but today I'm going to focus on... we have an amazing team at YWCA working with primarily women in the employment and training field, but also in health and wellness. But in employment and training, we run multiple programs that assist women, particularly those who need the most help. They're the most marginalized, and many of them are new to Hamilton. Programs that are anything from bridging their foreign trained credentials to those who don't necessarily have the credentials, but they need to get certification in Canada. What we find is that when we run those programs, we have huge success. And many of the women move on into employment, self-employment, and many times we, through their course of study, they're convinced that they want to go back to school. And so we have been recognized for this work. Where the downfall starts is that there's no consistency in funding. And so then what happens is that you build up hopes in the community, people hear about others' successes, and when we get the phone calls, we have to tell them, sorry, there's no funding this year. And, you know, it's very typical of women's organizations and those wanting to offer programs to women only. You know, we're very fortunate that we live in a country right now where we have governments from every level saying that they're feminists, that they support women, and that we should be doing a gender analysis. But I need to encourage every level of government that we need to be investing in programs and services. You know, we firmly believe at the YWCA that when you invest in women, you invest in the entire community.
I agree.
And so particularly those who are newer coming to Hamilton, they're facing culture shock. They're having to deal with all the responsibilities of family and find a new job and deal with the lack of childcare. The list just goes on.
On and on. What do you think are some of the barriers that women and other persons face within the workforce that can be broken? They're just barriers that are there, but they're not necessarily barriers that can't be crushed.
Sometimes it depends on culture within organizations. You know, what are these organizations committed to bringing the culture that needs to shift within organizations? Status quo is no longer how organizations need to be operating. And so we encourage and we coach women that when they're applying for jobs, if they have a luxury of multiple offers, we ask them, take a look at what they do for women in the company. Do they offer leadership opportunities? Do they promote women? These are things you can ask during an interview. Do they invest in women in the community? These are pretty good indicators if you're going to be successful in a work environment if you see a company demonstrate those things.
One of the programs that I think the YMCA and the YWCA offer, these in the employment services offices, I've been to them, are resume writing workshops.
Yep.
Because Kasim, who was on the last episode, he said that he's from Dubai, and he made a very good point when he said that the typical function of submitting an application to a job is you have your head and shoulders shot. I'm sure if I submitted that, they'd not employ me, but that's something that's not done here. So there are cultural differences in application. What are some of the cultural differences that you've noticed that a lot of applicants are saying, well, we thought that was normal to do?
Well, we've had that instance brought up. We've had individuals who want to put down personal details of their family circumstance because they've had to do it in the past, and we explain that, you know, that's not part of the Human Rights Code in Canada and our labour laws. And the other part is people don't tend to want to sell themselves as much as they really can in terms of their skills and abilities. We look at, you know, when we start to question them in terms of what they've done in their other jobs, there's a lot more that we can be adding to their resumes.
Yeah.
And so the other part I think is important, though. It's important to have a great resume, but the things that we teach are about networking. I think we all know that the greater your circle, the greater opportunity for you to hear about opportunities, to be introduced to those who are going to do hiring. So we spend a lot of focus on introducing people to networks so that they feel more connected to the community.
Networking is something that I was told when I first came here, really getting, and that's actually how we met.
Yeah, it is.
Because I do have to thank you, because we were at an award ceremony, I think it was 2014, and you were one of the, I was so nervous, I was hiding in the back, and I wore the wrong clothes, I wore jeans, and you were one of the first people that came over, and you had your card out, and you said, you interest me, or something, you just thrusted your card. So I think what I took from that is that for me to self-network is important, but we also need the support and the recognition of those such as influential people such as yourself to go, I haven't seen that person before, or who is this person? And we need kind of mutual intrigue, I think.
The other thing I always challenge people to do is that if you want to meet someone and you want to find out more about what they do, phone them. I don't know too many leaders in this community that say no, especially to newcomers who want to learn more about Hamilton, who want to contribute.
Yeah.
I always take time to meet with people. I think I learn more, and I think it makes our organization at the YWCA a better place, a more welcoming place.
Well, I truly appreciate your time, because I know that
you.
your schedule is incredibly busy.
Thank you, Daniel.
I really can't thank you enough. It means a great deal to me.
You're making huge contributions yourself. Please keep up the great work.
Thank you, Denise. Really appreciate it. And if you want to connect with Denise, we're going to put her contact in the Twitter, we call it on this show. We're going to put it on the screen. You can see it right now. There it is. Stay with us. We've got 2 more wonderful guests coming up. We're going to find out more about the challenges and the opportunities for employability in Hamilton.
In Canada, more than 13 million volunteers contribute over 2 billion hours every year. Volunteers support us in everything we do, and communities thrive because of it. At Volunteer Canada, we encourage and strengthen community involvement. We work with a broad range of partners to promote and support our shared vision of a vibrant Canada. To learn more, visit thenewvolunteer.ca, your connection to Canada's volunteering community.
Welcome back, lovely viewers. I am delighted to introduce my second guest to you, Alyssa Lai.
Hello, Daniel.
Now, Alyssa, some of our viewers might recognise you. You've been on a couple of shows, but this is the first time on my show.
That's correct.
This is wonderful. So thrilled to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
First of all, I have to give you a high five because you recently became a permanent resident of Canada.
Yes, that's correct. That's after more than 8 years being here in Canada. First as a student, and then I started as a worker.
I'm so thrilled.
Thank you very much.
And I really do wish you all the congratulations for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you came to Canada, you came to Hamilton as a student 8 years ago, enrolled at McMaster. Yep. Completed 4 years. You were sponsored by the government of Malaysia. Mm-hmm. And then after the 4 years, the Malaysian government, the recession, cut back in jobs, whatnot, you had the opportunity to stay in Canada. What was the decision behind staying after 4 years of studying?
I think a big indicator as well as factoring decision to say is the community as to whether I feel belong or whether I feel welcome here. Because it's one thing coming as a student and, being nice and comfortable and in the university environment. But there's another thing, is going outside and building a life almost from scratch because you're no longer a student anymore. So it's really the community as a whole that made me decide whether I feel welcome or belong or whether I see myself here, especially here in Hamilton.
We have a fly in here. We have an extra guest. You're not invited on this show. I mean, it's really interesting because Hamilton has a growing number of students, international students coming.
Correct.
You were one of them. But then when you leave university and you leave campus,
correct,
and you go off into the
wild,
into the world, into the local world. First of all, I'd love to ask what was the visa process behind, because your student visa expired. Mm-hmm. So then what was the next step?
So once you're done with your student visa, you have the opportunity to apply what they call a post-graduation work permit. And what it is that it's a chance for you to gain, enough working experience to qualify for permanent residency. So when I applied back then, the laws might have changed for now. I got 3 years of post-graduation work permit, as long as it doesn't extend the duration of the time when I was a student, because I was a student for 4 years. So within that 3 years, I worked hard to gain employment, not just any employment, but employment that's related to your field, as you know very well, because that's an important indicator as to whether or not you're eligible for permanent residency status.
Well, that's it. That's the one bit that doesn't always seem to get spoken about, that it's not just any job. And I think there's a certain amount of hours per week or per month that you have to attain, and it's all on our website. But let's talk about what it was like to look for employment in Hamilton. Where did you start?
Well, I started a lot of volunteering. For several reasons. One, volunteering gave me the confidence as a newcomer, but also more than ever is an easy way for me, to interact with people in a low-risk manner, where I don't feel like I'm being assessed or judged, like a job interview. So that gave me a lot of confidence in meeting new people and also recognizing which organizations I want to align myself with. I had my eyes set of, working in a nonprofit when I graduated, so I thought, why not volunteer in a nonprofit? So I started volunteering for many different organizations, including the YWCA, including Architect of Hamilton, and
no coincidence of our first guest, by the way. I was just saying
yes.
that was pure luck.
Luck.
I have to ask though, because volunteering is something. I mean, I've done lots of volunteering, and it is a good way to build up the Canadian resume. But how do you pay the bills if you're volunteering? This is, I think, is an ongoing problem for newcomers.
It's a catch-22, right? You got to gain work experience, and at the same time, you can't gain work experience until getting a job. So I was freelancing for at least about a year before getting a first full-time job at the Immigrants Working Center, which incidentally qualified me to apply for permanent residency. So it's a combination of, finding the time to volunteer, but also finding jobs here and there. And as many recent grads, not just newcomers, that is a challenge in terms of getting the foot at your door. And for me, it was a combination of different factors. First is identifying, where my skills fit in, and also finding people and organizations that are willing to work with me to fulfill my goals.
Do you think, though, that, and this is your opinion,
right,
that attaining a degree from McMaster assisted in gaining employment in Hamilton?
I think, there's very different types of newcomers in general. And I would say, because of my Canadian degree, that gave me an opportunity in terms of getting into the Canadian job market, because that is an advantage there with the Canadian degree. That being said, I do know of many, many different cases with many international students and even Canadians who have their own Canadian degrees and not able to still get a job. So there is that understanding they need to have. Even within the newcomer population and immigration spectrum, there are many, many different types of immigrants. And to look at all in one size fit all in one cookie cutter is not justifiable.
Yeah. I think we've talked about this, what we share is that, I mean, you came to Canada to study with the view of going back to Malaysia and going into the Malaysian civil service, whereas I worked in the British service for, I think it was 12, 13 years, and then left all of that to come to Canada. But the one thing about being in the service or going into the service is that that your professional life is made for you until you retire. Was it difficult to kind of then look at your situation then and go, okay, what do I do now?
It's definitely, you're in a limbo, to say you're wondering whether, do you stay here in Hamilton or in Canada, or you go back in Malaysia, right? So I think a big deciding factor is, again, going back to, what can I work with right now? Who are the people that could support me? And it's really the community that have embraced me throughout the journey.
I'm thrilled you stayed.
Thank you. And likewise, if not, would I have met you?
We wouldn't have met.
Yeah,
we wouldn't have met.
That's correct.
We would not have met. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts of Hamilton, us being this inclusive and integrative community, because we wouldn't have met. And there's so many people who I would. Well, actually, I've made a show out of it, so but I'm really happy that that you stayed, and you do. I mean, you do so many wonderful things. You're on so many boards, and you volunteer with so many organisations. You've started organisations. You've actually founded organisations. So I do recommend to all my guests to go on your Twitter,
the Twitter.
Thank you, because you're doing incredible things, and I truly, truly appreciate all of that.
And likewise, I think, it's great to be here and to also to have one-on-one chats with a fellow newcomer who understand what is it like, because our landscape is changing, and the more opportunities for people to share their stories and also learn from one another, that's invaluable.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll aim to, well, we should have a permanent residency party. Yes, we're having a permanent residency party. Just PRs. But honestly, congrats on that again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alyssa, for being here and for all that you do. Alyssa's The Twitter will be up on the screen. If not, we'll put it, there it is. So yes, she's definitely worth following because she's incredibly interesting and a wonderful person. Thank you so much, darling, for being here.
Thank you, Daniel.
Stay with us. We have one more incredible guest who I'm excited to share with you. Don't go anywhere. Stay right there. Unless you want to make a cup of tea, then I'll let you go.
After a night out with your friends, not having a plan for a safe ride home can leave you in a bad spot. You could end up riding in a police car, an ambulance, or a hearse. These unplanned modes of transportation can be a costly choice and do not take you home. Your plan could include a designated driver, a taxi, or public transit. Drink responsibly, choose your ride, and have a plan for a safe ride home.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more.
AJ lives for hockey and has ever since he was a baby.
Because I get to skate fast and score goals.
AJ was born missing his left arm right at the elbow. The Hyams provides a hockey device. It attaches to his passive arm.
You just slide the stick in and just play hockey with it.
Having the prosthetics gives AJ the opportunity to do anything anybody else can do. The Hyams support means everything to AJ, to other champs, and to their families.
Did you make a cup of tea? I hope you did. Sit tight because we have a very, very wonderful guest who I met. I was introduced to Naseem, it was about 1.5 years ago, and to be honest with you, I met her at a time when I was deciding what I was going to be doing, and to be honest with you, I was struggling. So we met and we lost touch and then bumped into Naseem again at the Go Bus. And I'm thrilled to say that she accepted my invitation to join me on the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Daniel.
Naseem, I'm really honoured, really honoured. I saw you a couple of months ago handing out leaflets at the Go Bus, the Go station at Hamilton.
Yes.
And you have a PhD, you attained a PhD from the States, so as a fellow PhD, I have to admit, I got on that bus and I felt a little... First of all, I was glad to see you, and secondly, I thought, why is someone with your immense education doing this? So let's go back a little bit. Tell us about where you're from and what brought you to Canada.
Originally, I am from Pakistan, and I immigrated with my lovely husband and amazing daughter to Canada on 20th of January 2010. I can't forget that day. And the reason to immigrate to Canada, I really wanted to live in a country where I could live in a peace, where I have more opportunities, more choices, and where I have freedom of expression. And back a few years ago, I came to Canada in the University of Laval to share my research on intellectual property rights. And at that moment, I decided that if I have to get settled down, then I will go to Canada. So just a few miles away, we drove and we got here.
So you attained your PhD in the United States.
Yes.
What's your PhD in?
My PhD is in workforce education and development, with a major on training and development. And now the name of the training and development, it has been changed. It's called learning and performance. And my research dissertation was also on workplace learning and performance competencies. I mean, the skills that are required by the professionals to be successful in the workplace.
So where's some of the places where you've looked for employment?
The corporations, different organizations, academic institutions.
But it hasn't been successful, if I may be blunt.
Yes, partly not successful. I was, in the beginning, I was lucky enough to get some contracts. But those contracts ranged from 2 days to 6 and 7 months. And unfortunately for all those, after all finishing those contracts, again, I was on the full-time job hunt.
So what is it that you would like to offer an employer? If someone was watching now and said,
Yes.
I want to take this person on, what is it that you can offer to an employer?
Yes, my PhD actually qualified me to be a successful social sciences researcher, learning and performance practitioner or professional, and also a writer. And with all these positions, I have gained practical experience at Pennsylvania State University, working on a high-profile projects. So these are.
So you offer a lot. I mean, well, you just said what you offer. What do you think have been some of the barriers to gaining regular employment, in your own opinion?
Yes. When I started looking for the job, it was really harder than I thought. It was really very difficult, and again, it's very challenging. Writing cover letter and resume and preparing all that application package, it was not hard for me. I have been in numerous interviews, and from phone interview, face-to-face interview, panel interview, first, second, and third interview, but none of the interviews helped me to land any job.
Sure.
I believe the aging and overqualification and lack of job opportunities, these are the barriers.
There are many factors.
Many
but
factors.
I think
it's
that
not just the.
You need, and I actually wrote this about, you need a foot in the door.
Yes, of course.
But then I think to myself, okay, where is the door? Here's my foot, show me the door, and the two will meet. We're going to put your email address up on the screen, and if you want to connect with Naseem, what I suggest that you do is go through the Twitter, but if you go to the Cable 14 website and you go to Community Produce, you find my page, and on there there's a thing that says Contact Daniel. Hit that emails me. I would be happy to then connect whoever it is with Naseem so that we can try and get you something a bit more regular, and we can keep you, darling. We can keep you, because that's what I want to do.
Thank you.
I don't want to see you go.
Appreciate that.
As a fellow PhD, you know, I don't even know what the words are, but I will do everything I can. And
thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I greatly appreciate that.
We've got to keep
I
you,
enjoyed
my darling.
that.
We've got to keep you. That's all we have time for today. We've had a very varied show. I really wanted to focus on the topic of employability. It is important because, let's face it, if we get jobs in Hamilton or the surrounding areas, we get to stay. I mean, it's a pretty simple equation. The more opportunities we have for regular employment, and that's not just for newcomers, that's for everybody, that's for born and raised people. This is not to exclude anybody. Look at my hands, I'm doing this. So we need to just kind of like up the game a bit and remember that work, live and play, work is what comes first. I've been too direct today. I feel like Mrs. Thatcher. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you to Cable 14 for the opportunities. I'll see you all very soon. Well, good night, my darlings. I'll talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye.